My Lords, we're told the provisions of Part 1 overall seek to remove historical anomalies and to remedy areas of historical legislative unfairness in British nationality law that has prevented citizenship being available to a range of people deemed to have the right to it. And although we've discussed some of the problems already today and possible improvements to Part 1, on the whole, this part of the bill is full of positive aspirations, and I welcome it. However, Clause 9 stands out as jarring and negative as presently framed, as it confers on the Secretary of State even more ill-defined and overreaching powers to make citizenship stripping orders without notice and effectively without appeal, as we've heard. But it builds on a prior problem of treating citizenship as contingent, a gift of the Home Secretary. So we have a chance here to build on the theme of Part 1's intent, and that is to be able to remove historic injustice. And that is why I put my name to Lord Moylan's amendment, which strips back powers to the 1981 Act, as he's explained. I'm not going to do as long a history rendition as Lord Moylan. His was so interesting. But I do want to actually go a bit further back to look at how we got here, because way back in 1870, William Gladstone proposed a plan to acquire the ability to revoke the naturalisation of any individual who, quote, acted in a manner inconsistent with his allegiance as a British subject. What was interesting is that this was vigorously opposed by the then Lord Houghton as a, quote, transcendental power more than any man should possess. Lord Houghton added that not only was this too much power being placed in the hands of the executive, but the law would also be discriminating in dealing differently with naturalised than British-born subjects. Parliament then agreed with Lord Houghton, and I'm hoping that today's Parliament will agree with Lord Moylan. Parliament and Lord Houghton then rejected the proposal by arguing that citizenship is a right that should not be arbitrarily removed by the state. Hear, hear to that. Now, sadly, this government and previous governments enjoy far greater transcendental power than Mr Gladstone ever dreamed of, and is treating citizenship as a privilege, not a right, and it carries on apace. Following on from some of the points that the noble Lord Moylan made in relation to 1918, I find it extraordinary that in 2017, more Britons had their citizenship revoked than in both world wars combined, and that since 2010, more than 150 have had their citizenship stripped. Although, as has already been described by the previous speaker, it's entirely unclear why, when, what explains different figures at any one time. But of course, this is not just about numbers. This amendment is drafted to undo an increasingly used power, and it would prohibit the Secretary of State making anyone stateless other than those who have obtained citizenship through fraud or misrepresentation. And to note that anyone who's obtained citizenship through fraud or misrepresentation are not citizens at all. In other words, this is about protecting people who are citizens. Clause 9 and the present powers are, of course, justified by the government and in popular discussion on this issue as reserved for those who pose a threat to the United Kingdom or whose conduct involves a very high harm, and they are associated especially with jihadists, and key dates form around 9/11, 7/7, the rise of ISIS and so on, and also associated with violent criminals. But that explanation seems dangerous as it allows the state to use the withdrawal of citizenship as a tool of punishment. Now, as a point to make, citizenship is a legal status in perpetuity, with no ifs and no buts for individuals. It enshrines a set of rights and responsibilities. Always when we're having this discussion, especially about control of borders, there's a spotlight on those trying to cross national borders and to get in, as it were. But we don't give enough attention to the virtues of national borders for the people within them. That is, those borders allow the creation of citizenry with rights and the foundations of social bonds and social solidarity. Any nation-state is not just an arbitrary grouping of individuals or made up of members of an abstract entity of humanity. National laws are made on behalf of citizens within a given territory, and those laws don't apply to citizens of other nations. Democracy only makes sense within a specific place. Politicians in the UK are accountable to British citizens, not French citizens or Australian citizens or what have you. UK citizens are then treated equally to each other within the boundaries of that nation-state. They're treated equally at the ballot box or before the law, whether bishop or builder, corporate CEO or cleaner, whoever or whatever your parents are, before the law and as voters you are equal. And that equality between citizens of any nation-state means that they have different rights and duties to non-citizens. For these special citizenship rights to mean anything, that equal treatment is crucial, because even when some of our fellow citizens renege on their duties and break the law, sometimes committing the most heinous transgressions of national law, we still don't renege on their citizenship. We should, of course, not be squeamish about punishing British citizens who, for example, join a barbaric army like ISIS, any more than when punishing British citizens who are child murderers or rapists. What we shouldn't do, is wash our hands of our citizens because we deplore the vile crimes they've committed. Does it not exhibit moral cowardice if the state pretends it has no responsibility for dealing with the reprehensible actions committed by some of our own citizens? And that's as true for Stephen Lawrence's racist murderers, Sarah Everard's murderer, or Shamima Begum's active involvement in a death cult committed to destroying Western free societies. What they all have in common, my lords, whether we like it or not, is that they're British citizens. If ISIS and the Islamicist terrorism are considered a special case, as some argue, then the government should bring special legislative solutions to Parliament. Instead, the Home Secretary is given a general power to outsource British criminals to third parties, such as countries they have never been set foot in, while allowing a practice that undermines and damages the very precious citizenship that British jihadis so grossly betray. The truth is that this power given to Home Secretaries doesn't keep citizens safe in the UK, but instead it creates a citizenship framework in which some are second-class citizens, their rights contingent and provisional. And those who say, don't worry, trust the Home Office not to abuse these powers, they'll only be used in a very narrow way, only directed at very particular people, I would just reply, Windrush. How counterproductive all of this is. It inevitably is racially divisive and has caused huge worries and anxieties, as we previously heard, amongst millions of British citizens, or would-be British citizens, who are, especially from ethnic minorities. And as we've noted in the second reading, Part 9 itself sends a message that certain citizens, despite being born and brought up in the UK and having no other home, remain migrants in this country. And while so many citizens, our own fellow citizens, feel their citizenship and therefore all their rights are precarious, then it makes an absolute mockery of demanding of those fellow citizens the duties of citizenship, such as loyalty, law-keeping, obligation to the life of the national community, taking responsibility for the democratic future of one's own society. To conclude, the noble Baroness Mackintosh of Pickering earlier cited British Future's excellent inquiry, Barriers to Britishness. That notes that at a time when society can feel fragmented and atomised, when there are new challenges to a unified citizenship in the form of, for example, divisive identity politics, or in the context of many institutions that once bonded us all as citizens together having a less powerful hold and, to be honest, a trust deficit, then surely the common bonds of secure citizenship are more important than ever. In preference to this, this clause's message that citizenship is a privilege and that many only possess that privilege under sufferance, depending on what a particular Home Secretary of the day of whatever party considers it acceptable or unacceptable behaviour. That, it seems to me, is very damaging. So let's take the opportunity of this bill to reset the narrative. I will be supporting a later amendment proactively promoting a positive citizenship agenda. But this amendment is a good start to this endeavour, and I'm also sympathetic to Amendment 32 and anything radical that secures the rights of British citizens, whoever they are, whoever their parents are, wherever they're from, and not the power to the Home Secretary.